Welcome to the Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do podcast with your host, Tom Singer. In each episode, we explore the interesting lives of business leaders, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and others who have a healthy dose of the entrepreneurial spirit. It is time to explore something cool. Now, here is your host, Tom Singer.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. Thank you for pulling your chair up to the Cool Kids table. Now, if you have listened to this show regularly, you know that it is my goal as the host to bring you a variety of people and ask them about their journey as an entrepreneur. Ask for what advice they would have for somebody who's trying to create their own path in the world, with the hopes that it's going to be like a little mini university. We have done over 360 interviews, and the truth is that from everybody, you get a little bit of a different piece of inspiration, a little different nugget of ideas, little different theories and concepts. And if you can just find a little piece every time you listen to this show or any other show like it, all of a sudden, it's going to be like this university where you're exposed to some really great professors. And today is absolutely no different. Today, I am brought to the show Melanie Benson. Now, she is a rock star business coach, and she's not somebody who just said, "Oh, hello, I'm a business coach" in 2018. She has been doing this for 17 years. She came out of corporate America. She was doing project management type stuff, total customer satisfaction things. And one day she realized, yeah, that's not what I want to do. I want to work for myself. Now, here's the other thing about Melanie that you may not know. Melanie and I went to college together, but we didn't know it. I just met Melanie a little while ago, a couple months back, and actually in our conversation, it turns out we both went to San Diego State University in the 80s, but she's much younger, even though we're the same age. And she was there at the same time, and I started playing the name game, like, did you know these people? Were you in a sorority? Did you do this? Well, there were 35,000 students when we were at San Diego State, so our paths never crossed, except for maybe we crossed on the quad and I said, someday I'm going to have that person on my podcast because I was a visionary. Okay, that didn't happen because who knew what a podcast was in 1987? Nobody. However, I will tell you that she's very cool. And one of the reasons she's very cool is she's an Aztec. So what do we say, Melanie? Go Aztecs. Absolutely. So Melanie Benson, welcome to Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do.
This is so cool. I love being here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I don't like to read the bios that PR people send and stuff like that. So I always give the guest a chance. Why don't you tell us, who is Melanie Benson? What is your business and how did you get there?
Yeah. So you mentioned I came out of corporate. Well, I kind of consider myself a corporate refugee, the highly unemployable. I figured that out about halfway through my corporate career and realized, okay, I don't think this is my thing, but it took me a really long time to figure out how to use skills that didn't really feel like they were built around a job. So I got inspired to be a coach by Stephen Covey.
Wow.
Yeah, they were doing leadership development work, and all of a sudden my bosses were so different. They were inspiring me to do things I didn't know were possible. And I was so inspired by what was happening, and I felt like I was becoming a better version of me. And I thought, what is that? I want to do it. And that's what kind of turned on the whole coaching thing for me.
Wow. So was it an easy transition to leave corporate America and go to work for yourself?
It was an easy decision. It was not an easy transition. Yes. So the decision, hey, I can be in charge of my own destiny. I can have my own work hours, all of that very alluring stuff. No problem. But yeah, the journey was very hard. Once I decided, I built my business up. I had 4 paying clients and I was so excited. And I left 2 weeks before 9/11, and you can only imagine how difficult it was to start my business from that place. So
wow.
I had that whole series of being broke and not having a really clear picture of how to make money. I just had a lot of passion. And I think that's what hits a lot of entrepreneurs. And that's really what helped me figure out what I wanted to be as a coach. And that was I wanted to help people who had a big passion for something they were good at. They're building their business around their expertise, but they kind of sucked at the running of the business. That was not their passion, and they were flailing. And I felt like they were a best kept secret in a closet, and they weren't really getting the business they deserved. So I helped those people make better decisions, really scale their business better. They become more profitable. And that's what lights me up every day is I know everything I learned is helping someone else make a business that's helping someone else.
So did you go through and start working through like the Stephen Covey organization, or did you just start your own thing? Did you go get certified as a coach, or did you just do it?
Yeah. So my path was, I turned to my manager and I said, can I learn how to do what you're doing? And they said, sure, it's coaching. And they go figure out what coaching programs are out there. We'll pay for it, which they did, because they had a great, very substantial education program. And then I got so deep into it that I thought, I don't know if I want to do this for someone else. I think I really want to do this for myself. At the time I was commuting, I was on the road like 250, 300 days a year. It was burning me out. And it's like I kind of wanted to have a lot more time flexibility. So that was what inspired me to be a coach. So I built my original coaching business on helping people achieve their goals.
Well, even 17 years ago, business coaching wasn't as known as it is today. I mean, now everybody you meet, it's like, oh, I'm a speaker and a coach. It's like you don't really coach or speak, but you can call yourself that now. I mean, everybody calls themselves a speaker and a coach now.
Right.
Everyone calls themselves a podcaster now, and some of them don't even have active podcasts. But back then, it wasn't as well known 17 years ago. So what was some of the struggles of trying to sell the idea to people?
Yeah, so interesting, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that experiences this in the beginning, you have your training and you have your talent that you've been groomed to offer, but you don't have results yet. And so being able to prove yourself as a business coach, or any kind of coach for that matter, when you haven't had proven results, was really tough. So I had to get super creative, and I actually hired my own coach to help me figure out how to translate what I was passionate about to things that people would pay money for. And I find that, one of the little battles that a lot of coaches and consultants and anybody who's a service business owner faces is they get stuck in the space of, how do I explain what is possible instead of what I do? And so learning how to explain what was possible and the results I could have help people achieve was a major pivot point. It's actually what turned things around for me. And then I had to do some mindset work. And I think the second biggest thing was really getting out of my own way, Tom. And I'm sure you hear about this all the time with the work you do around possibilities. If you don't believe in what you're doing and you don't believe that what you want to accomplish is possible, you will have so much mental junk going on, and the mental gremlins will take over. And I had so many mental gremlins going, you're not going to be able to do this. You're starving. You're going to need money. You're probably going to have to go get a job again. And getting past all that fear was a huge turning point for me.
Well, some of that I think comes from just the generation we grew up in, right? I mean, at our age group, this whole entrepreneurship thing, well, I mean, sure, there were people who started businesses and there were people who owned franchises, but there weren't a lot. I don't remember a lot of examples of solopreneurs. I was in a fraternity at San Diego State, and I don't remember a lot of people saying, I'm going to go start my own company. It really wasn't the culture 30 years ago or more that it is today. And so, I think we sort of grew up with that upbringing that, like, my dad worked for an insurance company for 35 years and retired with a gold watch. I think we were taught sort of to go that direction. So I think for a lot of us who are, that Gen X mindset is you have some of these things holding you back. So how do you get somebody to get rid of that mental mindset, that mental block that's holding them back, and get a more positive, growth-oriented mindset?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a decision. I think every shift we can create for ourselves, whether it's a shift of thinking, a shift of results, is you have to start with making a decision. What do you want? And how committed are you to having it? And are you willing to create new habits and new levels of thinking and, like a new paradigm to create that outcome? Because what most people do is they allow their current circumstances to dictate what they will achieve. And you can't do that. And, I want to go back for a second. You brought up most of our parents weren't really entrepreneurs. Well, here's the crazy thing. My parents actually were. We ran our own business until I was about 6 or 7. My parents were beekeepers, and they had one of the top honey companies, or supplied one of the top honey companies in Arizona. And my grandfather was a lobbyist, and all of this interesting stuff was happening, and it was all entrepreneurial. So I had that DNA inside of me to create something based on a need in the world. But my dad eventually didn't feel comfortable with that. So he went out and got a job. And then I watched my dad kind of lose who he really was. Like he didn't thrive in that environment. So I kind of had those two polar opposite paradigms working towards, conditioning my mindset around entrepreneurship.
So you've been doing this for 17 plus years. What is it that you love about the lifestyle of being an entrepreneur?
Well, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, our house is on the market right now. And so the real estate agent kicked me out to do an open house. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I could pack up my computer and go find a coffee shop. And I went, wait a minute, like I have my own business. I want to go to the beach. And so I took my dog and we went to the beach for 3 hours. And that is why I started my own business. I wanted the freedom to really flexibly go where I want to go and do what I want to do. If I want to work, I can work. If I want to take some time off, I take time off. And so I've designed my business to support my lifestyle. And that was a huge part of it. Now, in the beginning, I kind of fell into the old habits. I was working, 80, 90-hour weeks again, just like I did in corporate. And I kind of had to have one of those aha moments, wait a minute, I have no time. I'm not very fun. I don't see my family. What is happening? How did I recreate this job? And then I decided I was going to create a business that allowed me to have life and to do what I wanted when I wanted. And so for the most part, I get to do that.
So do you ever have those days, though, where you think, if I'd stayed in the Fortune 500, I would just be getting the paycheck and I could go home at 5 o'clock and turn it off? Do you ever miss it?
No, never. I think we would all say that once in a great while, there is that, yeah, it would be nice to get a steady paycheck. But there are ways to create that in your business. And I think that's the fun for me. That's the inspiration. That's what lights me up, is teaching people who are in charge of their own financial destiny how to replicate some of those things they loved about having a job, like a steady paycheck, which for us means consistent income. And it's like, I love the intricacy of figuring out how to optimize the things that could be better, and or figuring out what's broken and how to fix it in a way that is aligned with someone's passion.
So if someone has started a business and they're doing okay, but they're in a slump or they're stuck, what type of advice would you give them? How would you coach them?
Yeah, I get this a lot, actually. I'm very open about my own journey about continuing to hit burnout and what that meant and how I overcame a lot of that stuff. And so I get two types of I'm in a slump. One is my money is slumped, right? Like I'm not making money. And oftentimes what happens is we've gotten so caught up in a lot of bright, shiny objects that we're chasing all the wrong things, and just bringing someone back into the hidden gold in their business. And that's an offering that you have that when you sell it, it works really well. It not just sells something in the moment, but it brings in consistent cash flow afterwards. A lot of times we're not even focusing on it. It's right under our nose. So that's a big one on cash flow. But let's just say, Tom, someone's really burned out. They've kind of hit the wall. They don't really know what they want to do anymore. My advice, take a break. Take a vacation, take a step away, take a step back. Even if you're not going to make your payroll this month, or you're feeling like you cannot get the money in the door, take a break, go to the beach like I did yesterday, go for a walk in nature, get yourself out of this environment so you can recharge the creative brain. And then what I tell people is you got to go back to what expands you and excites you and inspires you. Because most business owners, they're doing stuff because it makes them money, and they start to lose the passion. And I believe if you start to lose the passion, you're going to eventually start hitting that wall, and you're not going to have the mojo and the inspiration to get up and do what it takes.
So how does somebody get back to that passion? I mean, sometimes we forget.
Yeah. Well, one thing, just a super simple thing, and it's so obvious that I think we forget it, is you got to reconnect to your why. And sometimes our why changes. I think mine's evolved over the years. For 18 years, you kind of change and grow a bit. But I think if you come back to your why did you start this business in the first place? For me, it was freedom. I wanted freedom, and I wanted to do something I loved, and I wanted to make a difference. And those were my 3 top reasons for starting my own business. And so coming back to my why, it's if I'm not doing enough of that, then I've kind of taken a wrong turn in the trajectory of my business. And now it's time to make some maybe tough decisions, maybe liberating decisions, so that I actually can do what I want to do again. And so here's what it looked like for me. I took $1 million business and I pivoted it. And even though it was really financially successful, I wasn't as inspired. I was building a business for everyone but me. I was building a business so my team members had coaching clients, and so that everybody else could say, oh, wow, look at Melanie, how successful she is. There's so much of my ambition that took over, and I created something that I wasn't as passionate about. So about 10 years ago, I pivoted, and I just recreated a business based on my passion that would continue to allow me freedom. I'm a 4-hour workday. I'm a 4-day a work person. Like, I like to work 4 days a week, and I like to have that 5th day for flexibility to do what I want. And so, yeah, I don't believe that success is defined by our financial success. I believe success is defined by whether or not we're accomplishing something every day that's making us feel good, and it's making the people around us inspired and wanting to be better versions of themselves.
Oh, I think that's awesome. So I talk a lot about what I call the paradox of potential, and it's all about the fact that people get so caught up, and I have potential with my business, and they think that means something. But you and I have seen it many a times. People start a business, and it fails. Well, they had potential. How come it failed? Well, because potential doesn't equal results. So some people are able to get across that gap between potential and results, and some people can't. What do you think separates those two types of people? Why do some people get to results?
Well, I think there's a couple of main things. One, I will come back to mindset every single time.
Mindset's a big deal, and it's really only
so
in the last couple of years getting a lot of sort of buzz in the business world.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, it's probably the number one thing I get booked to speak on these days is mindset in different types of business environments. But I think if we don't have the right mindset, what we mean by mindset is a set of thoughts and beliefs that align you with your goals. See, what I see happening is people have these goals, but then they're constantly, their logic mind is talking themselves out of it over and over again. They're like, you can't do that. All of these old, conversations you've had with parents or whoever that didn't believe in you. And so you're just replaying that over and over and over again. But I think the other thing is, like, we could have the best mindset, but we don't have the right, I think of it like a structure. And the structure is, I have something that is aligned with my target audience. I know how to communicate the value, and I'm really good at getting it in front of the people who want it. And there has to be a little structure around that for it to work. So you can have a great mindset, but you're trying to sell the wrong thing, or you're selling the right thing to the wrong people, and they're never going to buy. So I think when you get those two things lined up, you're rocket fuel. You're unstoppable.
Nice. So, Melanie, I've got a couple more questions for you. But first, I have to thank the sponsor of this episode. So this episode is brought to you by Podfly Productions. Podfly takes the time and the headache out of creating your own podcast. They set you up with the right equipment, training, and the guidance to ensure that you're going to sound amazing. Podfly does all the heavy lifting and the technical work so that you can focus on creating great content, growing your audience, and interviewing really cool people like Melanie Benson. Hey, if you want to start a podcast, and I know that some of you do, jump over to podfly.net/coolthings and check out the offer that they have for the listeners of this show. So, Melanie, I call this show Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do. What's the coolest thing you're doing in your business right now?
Oh, it's so hard to pick one. I think one of the coolest things was I had to get my courage hat on and decide to take my business in a new direction last year. And we launched something called the Own Your Bold Challenge. So we offer it twice a year. And I'm going to tell you, something really amazing happened when we did a little pilot. People got so excited. They were like, oh my God, I'm feeling excited. I've got the courage again, the confidence again. And to me, that makes everything I do worthwhile. So when I hear that someone else has the confidence and courage to go pursue their big, bold goals. So that was pretty rock star. There's a lot of other good things going on. We're getting ready to redo our money mindset program and give it a big facelift and get it out there in the world. That's fun. And I'm speaking a lot, which I know, Tom, as a big speaker, you can probably get excited about that too. I have some great events lined up to speak at this year, and that just gets me fired up.
Awesome. That's excellent. So, Melanie, we could talk about you and your company all day long, but I love to ask the people who come on this show who it is that they admire, because I think entrepreneurs are observers and they see people in the entrepreneur world who are doing cool things, and I can only see so many people. So I ask the people who come on the show, who do you think, when you look at them and their business, you think, wow, he or she, they're doing cool stuff?
Yeah, I'm going to give a little shout out to a common friend of ours, Steve Olsher. I've known Steve a really long time.
You're both San Diego folks.
Yeah, but he's doing some really great stuff with podcasting right now, and he's really moved himself into an influencer and an industry leader with taking some bold action. And so he's living what I teach right now with this podcast event he does, New Media Summit. So I love that. I love that he's doing that. I'm pretty jazzed that he's out there doing that stuff. I think he's doing some cool stuff. But I also want to say, I'm a huge Oprah fan. Like, I think Oprah is one of those paradigm busters. She's one of those people that's a thought leader and an industry setter. And, she's created a paradigm around personal development that just didn't exist 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. So I think she's doing some really cool stuff, and she's kind of making her own way and setting her own rules. And that's a huge part of my work, is creating success based on your rules. So I think that she does that well.
Well, and as a speaker, I love stories, right? I tell stories for a living, but I love to hear stories. And one of my favorite sort of business overtold, if you will, stories is how from her first job in television, the producer basically told her, "You're too fat and not good enough to be on TV." And, fired her, or at least sort of, set the stage to push her out. Could you imagine being that person? I would love to someday go to dinner with the person who says, yes, I am the person who told Oprah, you don't have the right look for television. Because clearly, that was not missed out. And that's something we have to remember, is when people say no, we have to remember that that's their mindset, right? That's just where they're coming from. And so often people hear that and they just crater. And I've done it throughout my career. Again, I don't think we grew up in our age group, in this thing where the culture was like, go tackle it, be, a disruptor. And so it's hard in my 50s to sort of do that. So I love stories about people who just said, yeah, someone saying no, that doesn't stop me. And I've made this big pledge and I'm living it, that I'm going to make 50 to 75 the best years of my life. And, recently, I was doing some work for somebody and they weren't mad, but they were being a little, critical and all this. And I just laughed. I said, I'm not going to let it upset me, because you know what? I don't get upset about little stuff like that. That's just that person's quirkiness. And, I just worked through it. It's all good. But I don't think I was that way at 30.
Yeah, I think that's something we bring on with wisdom. There's something beautiful about being in your 50s, is that wisdom really does kick in and you get to look at your life in a whole new way. And I love that you brought that up, because I truly believe that we can't let other people's paradigms of what's possible dictate what our paradigm of what's possible is.
Yeah, and the millennials are doing awesome stuff, right? They dominate the news and the cool things they're doing, and they've certainly been exposed to a lot more of this entrepreneurial stuff than I think we were in our day. However, I did a couple episodes back. I had 2 episodes back to back where people were a little more seasoned in their career, and we sort of joked about the fact that you've got wisdom when you're old enough to have watched the original Charlie's Angels. The first season with Farrah Fawcett. If you remember when Farrah Fawcett was on Charlie's Angels, then you have some wisdom in the world.
Yeah. Maybe you need a Cool Things Millennials Do podcast.
There you go. Well, I have a lot of them in my life. I've got a daughter who's sort of right on the cusp. She was born in 97, so I think she just misses it that year. But then I mentor these 2 young gentlemen who they've kind of become they call themselves my fake sons. My daughters have actually asked, are they in the will? Because they're around a lot. But they're 2 guys who I just mentored in business. I met them when they were right out of college. Introduced them to each other, and they're kind of best buddies. And what has become of that is the friendship that I've developed with these people. And their friends are like, how did you get a mentor who gives you so much of his time? And, we don't know if it's repeatable. Like, we've talked about going and doing a speech on how do you find a mentor for their age group, because we have such a good relationship. And I'm like, I don't know. I found you, you asked me to watch your computer in a Starbucks. I don't know if that's actually repeatable, that person becomes sort of your fake dad. But I definitely, through them, I'm exposed to a lot of their friends, and the millennials are doing cool things. I won't ever sell them short.
Yeah, they are a fascinating, what we call a genre or
demographic
age group.
Yeah. So before I let you go, if somebody's listening to this show and they're like, I need a rock star business coach, I need to know more about Melanie Benson, where do they find you?
Yeah, MelanieBenson.com. You can also catch my podcast, Amplify Your Success, which hopefully Tom will be on shortly. And, I would love to share just a resource that if you are in that position where you're like, okay, I'm really trying to get that cash flow up, free resource, get you started, rapidcashstrategies.com. Super great resource of ways to get money coming in your business fast.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, maybe I should go look at that.
You'd love it.
So, I have one disappointment now at the end of this interview. I'm very disappointed that we never became friends at San Diego State in the 1980s. I think we missed
maybe we were.
We missed 32 years of a friendship. I mean, we were living blocks apart.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
That's, that's what happens when there's 35,000 students. You couldn't possibly know everybody. Plus, in my day, they only had 3,000 living on campus. Now they've got, huge dorms and apartments and everything else that just didn't exist when we were there. So it's like if you weren't in the same dorm or on the same side, of campus, there were like dorms on two different sides. And I didn't know anybody who lived on the other side. There was no reason to know those people.
I'm pretty sure you were that guy sat down next to at the coffee shop.
Monty's Den.
One time.
Monty's Den. I was the guy with the $2 pitcher of beer.
That's it. I'm sure it was you.
That's right. If you ever saw a frat boy with a pitcher of beer, that was me.
Yes.
So.
Well, we could have created some great memories, I'm sure, but now we get to create new ones now.
That's right. We're friends now, and that's what matters. So go Aztecs, and everybody check her out at melaniebenson.com and all those other sites that she said. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me at the Cool Kids table.
You bet. Hey, and the other thing I say at every episode, if it wasn't for the audience, we wouldn't have a show. Thanks for tuning in and getting those tidbits and those nuggets of information from Melanie. We're going to be back in a couple of days with an interview with somebody just as cool as Melanie. But in the meantime, I'm going to challenge you. Go out there and have a great day.
Thank you for being part of the Cool Things Entrepreneurs Do podcast. Without your participation and listening to these conversations, there is no show. Connect with Tom at tomsinger.com and follow him on Twitter at tomsinger.